Hello, everyone. Today we're doing the local missions track, and here we have Faith with Northwest Community Church in Vickery Meadows, and you can take it from here.
Good morning, guys. I'm really glad that you guys have come and are attending this particular session with just refugees. And we're going to go through a little bit of refugee background, and then we're going to jump into a simulation. And so with me is Jean Shangera. We both work at the Northwest Community Center, which is the local outreach arm of Northwest Bible Church. And we work in an area of Dallas called Vickery Meadow. It's about 10 to 15 minutes from here, depending on traffic on 75. And we have just a ton of refugees that live out there. We have thousands of refugees from over 40 countries, and just have the beautiful privilege out here of working with all the nations that God has just brought into our backyard. And so want to dive right in. And so let's see if this works. Okay. Just a quick overview with just some terminology with forced displacement and resettlement. And so forced displacement is the involuntary or coerced movement of a person away from his or her home or home region. And so this aspect is people just don't have a choice. This isn't something that refugees face, where there's some sort of political, tribal, ethnic situation where it is not safe for them to be where they need to be. That is different than the term resettlement, which involves the selection and transfer of refugees from a state in which they've sought protection to a third state, which has agreed to admit them. And so often, refugees will flee, for example, from Congo, and they will seek asylum in a neighboring country, if it's possible, such as Uganda, and then hopefully will make it to a third country like the United States that will admit them as refugees, which is an actual status that they come in with. And so our simple definition of who a refugee is someone who has had to flee their home or their home region for three simple things: war, persecution, or violence. When you look at the technical definition, it includes or well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, political opinion, nationality, or membership in a particular social group. So again, this is not by choice. This is different from some terms that you might hear in the news about either IDPs, which are internally displaced people, stateless people, and then asylum seekers. And we'll talk about a migrant in a second. And so internally displaced people are folks that have had to flee their home, but they don't cross an international border. They are the largest group of displaced individuals that oftentimes get overlooked because they're not protected by international law, because they're technically still under the legal protection of their own government. A stateless person is someone who is not a citizen of any country, or they're not recognized. And so, for instance, the Rohingya people in Burma oftentimes are not considered and recognized. And so citizenship is really important, right? Because it's an agreement between you and the government that you would be receiving certain rights, certain protections, certain freedoms that just are not available to these folks. And so it's almost in a sense that they don't exist. And then you have the asylum seeker. And this is someone who's had to flee his or her country, and they're seeking sanctuary in another country. So that's kind of the second step of refugees before they actually become refugees. And then all of these are different than a migrant. And so refugees are very different than migrant workers, because migrants is someone who's able to move by choice. They're crossing an international border. Oftentimes it's for work or other reasons. So since 1980, with the Refugee Act of 1980 under President Reagan, we have had a pretty steady flow of refugees into the United States. In the 90s and early 2000s, we were hovering about the 80,000, 90,000 mark. The reason that I put this up here is you'll notice a significant decline between 2016 and 2020. During the Trump administration, that number dropped because the cap of refugees that were allowed in dropped significantly. In 2020, the cap was 15,000. And the reason that I mention that is a lot of the resettlement agencies had to become skeleton crews. And so under President Biden, in 2021, he raised that cap back up to 62,000. And for the since 2022, it's been 125,000. When those numbers are presented oftentimes in the news, we're thinking, oh, 125,000 refugees are coming in. And that's not the case. Because a lot of the resettlement agencies have had to go down to skeleton crews, their numbers haven't gone back up. And so we haven't been able to process as many refugees coming in. But you'll notice last year, we kind of crossed that, or we're around that 60,000 mark. For this fiscal year, which started in October, we're hovering about the 30,000 mark. So we're starting to see them come in. We are living in this beautiful age, and it's a hard statistic, but it's an important one, where we're dealing with the most displaced people ever around the world. And so also the opportunity that we have to come in to be able to be the hands and feet of Jesus and love them through all of that. And so it's very easy to look at these numbers and just think statistics. And when you kind of break this down, this means that one person every 2 seconds is displaced. And so in the time that it took me to read that sentence, someone's entire world has changed. They've had to flee their home. They're fleeing everything that they've known, people that they've grown up with, without necessarily knowing how they're going to make it back, if they'll be able to make it back. 1 out of every 76 people has had to flee his or her home country or their home because of some sort of conflict or persecution. This is significant because 41% of displaced people are under the age of 18. So children are greatly affected by this. They are 5 times more likely to be out of school than their non-refugee peers. When you look at the stats, by the time they're getting to university level, it's like 1 out of 6 kids are making it to university at best. And education is really important. It's not something that I have to preach to you guys. You guys are grad students that are out here just knowing what rights, what access to resources are available. That comes with education. And so they're really at a disadvantage in a lot of ways. And then 72% of all refugees just come from these 5 countries. And so you talk about just the significance of persecution and warfare that are just leaving people displaced. In Texas, in the last 2 decades, over 90,000 people have been resettled. And in this fiscal year, since October 2023 to January 31st, the February numbers haven't come out yet. Texas has already welcomed 2,226 refugees from over 37 countries. Okay. So now we're going to go into our simulation. And so in front of you, you should have a packet. Just make sure that you have 4 cards of 4 colors each. If you don't have any, John can get you a packet. So before we start, I'm just going to throw out a question and would love to let this be a little bit interactive. How would you feel if you were told that you were in great danger and had to quickly leave behind your friends, your home, the things that belong to you, and depending on the size of your family, members of your family? I'm a big, sometimes, trying to describe things might be harder. So I've included an emotions wheel. Yeah. Feel free to use it or just immediate thoughts. What comes to mind?
Terrified.
Terrified? Yeah.
Sad.
Sad? Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. What? Angry, yeah. How would it feel to not know where you're going? What about the loss of control?
Anxiety, like I feel like that doesn't even cover it,
Yeah.
but full of anxiety.
Fear? Mhm. What would you take with you? Your phone, okay? What else? Someone from this side of the room.
Money.
Money?
Bible.
Yeah, okay. Some of the essentials. All right. For this exercise, I'm gonna just give a little bit of an overview and some instructions, and then we'll get started. It is really hard for people who live in a country that is untouched by war physically here on our land to understand the loss that a refugee suffers. And we hope that this exercise will help you kind of begin to understand some of the loss that a refugee suffers. And it's really just an understanding. It is not going to be easy. It is not intended to be easy. And this is going to be a personal exercise. And so no one is going to see the answers that you write except for yourself. And when this becomes uneasy, just as a disclaimer, I think one of the ways that we may tend to try to cope with this is to laugh. And so I'm going to just try to ask that we not do that. In front of you, you have 16 slips of paper. We're going to begin with the yellow. On the yellow, let's see, please write things that you enjoy. You're going to write one item per card. There are some examples that are listed on your card, such as, going dinner at your favorite restaurant, date night with your spouse, hammocking if you enjoy that, reading, playing an instrument. Write one example per card. On your pink cards, these are roles that you play in life. Again, there are some examples that are listed on your card. One role or way that you identify yourself per card, but please do not include anything about your faith on there. Okay, on your green cards, these are going to be your most valuable physical possessions. So please don't put anything on there like my tenacity. These are physical things. If you have any pets, you can list them in this section. Okay, and then on the last 4 set of cards. What did I do? Okay, it will be the 4 important people in your life and 1 name per card. Do not clump people together. So you don't write siblings or parents. You have to write the name on each card. Right. And just as a reminder, again, this is a personal exercise. No one is going to be looking at your card. There will be a section where you will need to be near another person. So if you're sitting kind of away from another individual, if you want to get closer now, you can. Or you might just have to move for part of the exercise. Just look, you're fine right there. Just you're close enough. So, all right. Okay, here we go. War has broken out in your country. The danger has been increasing in the past few weeks, and the violence has grown incredibly intense and gets closer and closer to your village. If you leave, you don't know if you're going to be able to return again. You can hear the sound of gunfire, and you know that the sound of fighting is very near. You know that you have to escape very quickly. So you run home, and on the way, you are told that there is a truck that is coming to take you, your family, and your neighbors to the coast where you hope that you can find a boat to take you to safety. Refugees make heartbreaking decisions when they have to flee their home. You have 30 seconds to choose 1 paper from each stack that you have to lose. You are welcome to either rip it up or just put it face down in your Ziploc bag. All right, 30 seconds.
29, 28, 27, 26, 25, 22, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
Fleeing your home because of war is a horrible experience. Someone give me a word to explain how this process made you feel, having to get rid of 1 card in each stack.
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed? Okay. Why?
It was a lot of decisions to make in a really short amount of time.
Conflicted? Okay, how so?
Feels like you're ordering of an importance in a split-second decision. You're like, it doesn't mean that you don't care about these things, but it does mean that there are more important things.
Yeah. I decide importance. Okay. What else?
It's so heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking.
It it makes me nervous for, like, 'cause these are then the, like, most important and the most important.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't even know how I would make the decision going forward if I had to do that again.
Right. Right. Yeah. Right. You had the choice initially to write down certain people, certain things that you're going to bring with you, right? Like you said, they're the most important. And then now you're having to choose out of that. Up until this point, you've been able to choose what you're getting rid of, what you're leaving behind. Okay. Yeah. When people are fleeing, there's the thought and the importance of who's important, what is important. Did anyone consider as you were writing things down on weight, ability to carry stuff through? Did anyone? I'm getting a lot of no's. Okay. All right. The truck has arrived and you can't take anything else. So you bring your bag and you climb onto the old wooden truck. You're on your way and you take one last look at your home. You have to leave your pet behind, which makes you very, very unhappy, but there is nothing that you can do. The truck barely fits your family and your neighbors. So look at the remaining papers that you have. And if you wrote down any pets that you may have packed, remove them at this time. And then turn your papers down in front of you. You start to cry as you think about all the happy times that you had and spent with your pet, and you wonder what's going to happen to him or her now. The seats on the truck are hard and they're narrow, and whichever way you sit, you just cannot get comfortable. The driver is in a hurry to get everyone out and get you to safety, and he speeds along the road and almost loses control. He slams on the brake and the truck screeches around the corner. You're thrown from your seat and your bag goes flying, and some of the contents in your bag fly out. Unfortunately, the driver does not stop because he does not hear you and you have lost some items. So at this time, with your neighbor, mix their cards around and you are allowed to remove from your neighbor's set 1 or 2 cards. Do not remove any blue cards. Any of them except for the blue. Any of them except for the blue. And have them face down. So your neighbors aren't looking at them. You can take 1 or 2 from your neighbor and set them to the side.
Was it 1 or?
1 or 2. Any of them except from the blue pile. Okay. Give y'all another few seconds. When you're done with this, you do not look at your cards. They are still face down. So you do not see what your neighbors have taken. Yeah, at this point on, you're not going to look at any of your cards. They're going to be face down. Moving forward. Okay. How does it feel to not know what's been taken from you? Supposedly. What did that feel like when your neighbor got to choose not only what cards to take, but how many cards?
Just even more helpless.
Yeah, helpless. So you continue on with your journey. The truck has to climb up a steep mountain and it gets slower and slower. And this weird, strange choking sound starts to come from the engine. You wonder if this truck is going to make it. And then finally you hear this bang and the truck grinds to a halt. Something is wrong with this truck, but unfortunately you don't have time to figure out, and it cannot be fixed. You must continue the journey on foot. Now you discover that your bags are too heavy to carry. You must give up one card from your stack, any card except from the blue stack, and you cannot look at them. So just pick any card from the pink, yellow, or green. Keep the cards face down, even if you're discarding them, so that you don't know what you're discarding at this time. You struggle on, but you find it harder and harder to keep going. It is a hot, hot day, and the sun is just beating down on you. There hasn't been rain for a year, and the roads are all dry and beat up. They're full of holes, and they're difficult to walk on. As you journey, one person in your group falls sick, and after several days, passes away. You help bury the body quickly, and you try to remember where it is that you have buried them, hoping that one day you'll be able to come back. So at this time, remove the right blue card in your stack. What that looks like. Keep it face down. Your group must get to safety in the forest ahead, and you do not have time to mourn the loss. You're all very tired from this journey, and as you enter this forest, you must continue to set up shelter. You need to slash and cut away the trees. Now, my question for you. What will you do? What will you use to do this? Did you pack supplies to be able to do this? This is just a question for yourself to think about. Did you pack any tools at the beginning of this journey, or are you going to have to makeshift a tool? And just for yourself, do you know how to? Or will you have to learn on the spot? After a decent night's sleep, after a long time, you look at your bag and you notice that some bugs and maggots have gotten in, and they have destroyed one of your items beyond repair, and you've got to leave it behind. Discard any green card. After another 4 days, you can see the sea, and you know that you have reached the coast. When you get closer to the water, you are overjoyed to see several fishing boats waiting for you. However, the boats are very small, and unfortunately, you get separated from your family. Before you get on the boat with your neighbors, the fisherman demands that you pay him. You must discard any one card. So you join your neighbor's boat, and your boat gets caught in a storm, and the fisherman says that you and your neighbor must get rid of 3 items. So turn to your neighbor, and whoever is older gets to take 2 cards from their neighbor. So if you're the younger one, you get 2 cards taken from you, and the older one only gets 1. Two cards that you get to take from your neighbor. So from you, let me just take one. Steal one.
Boy, it's like hard to explain.
All right. It's done. Okay. You get sick on the boat, and you just pray that this journey is going to get over. Whatever the end would be, you're ready to be done. After a couple of days, you make it to shore and supposed safety. Asylum. You breathe out a sigh of relief. Yet, this is only part of the journey. What will happen now? So, with your cards still face down in front of you, I'm going to ask again, how does it feel to have things taken away from you? Give me one word.
Despair.
Despair. Okay. I've got, if you need some more words, some more. What else?
Threatened, I guess.
Threatened?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Chaotic.
Chaotic. Up until now, you haven't seen what cards have been taken from you. At this time, you can turn the cards that are still remaining and take a second to look at them. Okay, so same question. How does this make you feel now that you know what you're left with? Are any of you guys surprised by what you're left with? A little bit? Okay. Do you guys think, looking at what you're left with, did y'all bring the right items? Do you think whatever, however you would define right? You're shaking your head. Yes? Okay.
Bible, money, and prayer.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Some of my things were connected. So like when I flipped them over, something I enjoy was talking to my mom on the phone. My mom wasn't one of the people left.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, I have to, that's
Yeah.
not irrelevant.
Yeah.
Also, like some frustration with even like the physical things, the things that were the highest priority were not the things that were like left over because it was outside of my choice.
Right. Right. You were saying
Well, my wife,
you lost your wife. Yeah. How does that make you feel?
lonely.
Well, yes.
That like the things that I enjoy, like I don't care to have here. Like I'd rather have like the people
Hmm.
like in my life.
Yeah, the people in your life. Yeah, and some of that was taken away from you by choice of during this exercise, your neighbors taking. But also it may have been as you were journeying that a loved one passed away. What feelings came up when we went through this exercise and a family member and someone in your group just passed away and you didn't have time to process that? Did it impact you at all? Did you notice it in the middle of this whole exercise? Or was it just something that happened and we moved on from it?
In the middle of it, you're like, I wonder who that was.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it sucks because I know that I cared about everybody that was left on the list.
Yeah.
But in the moment, you're trying to get to the next destination. So you're like, that sucks. Let's piggyback that later.
Right.
And you're just pushing through. So it's like this delayed despair.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's where it's like, feel it, but you don't feel it until you flip it over and then you're like, well, that actually happened.
Yeah. What for you was the most difficult part of this journey?
Losing people.
Losing people? Okay. No control.
Not knowing what's gonna happen next.
Yeah,
Like if this is what I get to keep or if I'm gonna lose more.
right.
Worried that I'd get separated from my fiance.
Hmm.
It's like all the other things would hurt to lose, but if I could keep one thing,
Yeah.
I would want to be separated.
Yeah. Well, notice in part of this exercise, it was also sometimes as we're playing a simulation, you know, and we have some sort of perceived control. We hope maybe I'll put my cards down in a certain way and I won't touch certain ones. And then we did an exercise where your neighbors were mixing them up, or they got to choose how many to take or which ones to take, and you doing the best that you can still don't have any control over that. While we were going through this, did you guys notice any sensations in your body while this was happening? You guys notice a difference in your breathing, heartbeat, any of that?
Heaviness, for sure.
A heaviness? Yeah. How did you guys feel at the end of the journey?
Hollow.
Hollow? Why?
Yeah, I think just the, like, losing people specifically, just with that, you just realize there's a lot of identity wrapped up in just the relationships of being a son or a father.
Yeah.
Or spouse. You lose that, you lose part of your identity. Something's missing.
Mhm. You'll notice that when we did the exercise, it wasn't this ginormous climax moment of now you've reached shore and everything is perfect. It's not a fairy tale ending. It's a step in the journey of this is only one part of it. And that's purposefully designed. For us, we have the privilege at the Northwest Community Center to meet people once they come kind of on those shores of, okay, and now what's next? I want to share a couple of stories that were shared with me with you guys about people in our community. And so I have a friend from Burma who was at home with her 3-year-old daughter. And one day while her 7-year-old son was across town at their school, an army attacked their town. Her husband was working. This army was coming from the direction of the school. And this woman had a horrible choice to make. Does she take her daughter and run to the school, hoping to find her 7-year-old son, knowing that in the process they could all be killed? Does she run away with her daughter, hoping that the son survives and somehow they get reunited? Does she give her daughter to her neighbor and run away while she tries to find her son, knowing that she may not see her daughter again? Does she look for her husband? Just some of the many questions and thoughts that went in her mind. So when people are fleeing violence, they have to make decisions that we cannot imagine having to make. It's part of what was simulated in the beginning of discarding certain items, making certain items. And these refugees live with these consequences of their decisions. Sometimes it's for a short time, sometimes it's forever. This friend from Burma chose to take her daughter and she ran away with her neighbors to keep them both alive. And once they got to a point of safety, after several hours, she left her daughter with the neighbors and went to go look for her son, not knowing if he had been killed or injured or taken. She had no idea where her husband was. She eventually found her son, slightly injured, but he was okay. She couldn't find her husband. It would be 2 years before they were finally reunited in a refugee camp. So just imagine sitting in a refugee camp, not knowing if the people in your lives, if your brother, your wife, fiance, is alive, not knowing if they're safe, if they are, not knowing if your home still stands, if your neighbors that were left behind are still there. And again, sometimes refugees finally come to this knowledge and sometimes they don't. I also have another story that I'd like to share from a man from Iraq when his family had to flee. He was a boy when his parents decided that they needed to get out of Iraq. Fortunately, they had the means to get out and take a boat to India. And so the family packed up their car with everything that they wanted to keep. It was filled up to the roof of their car. And the family had to drive across a desert road, which would take about 2 days. They set out on this desert road, and soon they came to a checkpoint where armed soldiers forced them to stop their car and get out. The soldiers went through their things that they had packed, and they kept what they wanted. Then they told the family to get back in the car and to keep going. Over the next 2 days, the family came to checkpoint after checkpoint, and the same thing happened every single time. Sometimes the soldiers were okay. Sometimes they were very mean. Sometimes they were very aggressive. And the family was afraid for their lives. By the time they reached the last checkpoint, there was nothing of value that they had in the car. But the soldiers forced them to unpack everything and show it to them. When they realized that there truly wasn't anything valuable left, they became extremely angry. And at gunpoint, they forced the father and the oldest sister to stand aside. And then they made the rest of the family, the mom, the son, and the other daughter, to get back in the car. This just led to a lot of chaos. Everyone began shouting and crying. Finally, the father spoke and said, get in the car and leave. He tried begging the soldiers to allow them to go, but the soldiers were adamant and did not allow them to. He told his son to take care of his mother and his sister, and distraught and just fearing for their lives. They got in the car and they left. The family, the mom, the son, and the daughter, made it to the boat, went to India, and eventually they came to the United States. These events happened 20 years ago, but they have never found any information on what happened to the father or the sister. And the family assumes that they're dead, but they hope that they didn't suffer before they died. So these are some of the stories that we hear about the hardships of our neighbors and the significant trauma that they come with as they're processing. And at the Northwest Community Center, our heart really is to come alongside our neighbors and to share the love of Jesus with them. A little bit about us in the last few minutes. We're located, like I said earlier, about 10 to 15 minutes from here. We have over 35 people groups from over 40 countries that are represented. And so the Lord has just brought the nations to our backyard. And in his own way of just turning the significant evil that exists in our world and bringing about good for them to hopefully connect with us, to connect with Christians, to just be able to love them, to see them, to care for them, to acknowledge what it is that they've gone through. And so our heart, you can see this, is just to be a welcoming space that embraces all cultures. We've been in our location for about 8 years now, and really want our space to be open and available to every single member of the family, regardless of life stage. And so whether you're a kid or an adult, that you would be able to find refuge in our walls. So we're located in this Vickery Meadow area that is close to Walnut Hill and 75. We're in one quadrant of the neighborhood. And so this is a map of where a lot of our neighbors are from, about 40 of the biggest countries that our neighbors come from. And our mission really is to aid, empower, and invite refugees to experience new life. With aid first of recognizing that a lot of our neighbors have immediate physical, tangible needs that we need to address, and coming alongside them and then empowering them to thrive in a new culture. We aren't trying to get neighbors dependent on us. We want them to be able to provide for their families, to sustain a good quality of life. A lot of folks that are coming here had very good lives back home that were just robbed. And so some of them are very high officials in their home country and whatnot. And so how do we care for them? How do we help them as they just navigate life out here? And then inviting them to experience new life. One, here in the United States, it's a very different culture. But two, also inviting them to experience new life with Christ. And so our logo really is about taking these broken pieces, these broken people, and the coming together and the making of whole, which I think is also very true in the biblical lens of taking our brokenness, coming to the Lord to surrender to Him and making one. And so we do this in a lot of different ways. A lot of what we do is about fellowship. It's around gathering around the table. It's about sharing stories and cultivating spaces for people to be able to share with us. Our center is used 7 days a week. We actually have refugee churches that meet on site with us. Jean is one of the pastors of one of the churches out there. And then we have all sorts of different events and programs for them. We do a monthly diaper distribution for a lot of our families because diapers are really expensive, and depending on where they're coming from, our largest groups are Congolese, our Afghans, and our Burmese. And depending on the family, they have anywhere between 5 to 9 children. So diapers are very expensive. And so we come alongside them to, one, help alleviate some of that financial cost, but two, when children get potty trained, they can get enrolled in early childhood programs, which is good for them, but also allows parents to work. And so it's just really this domino effect. So every month we give out diapers to about 300 families and hygiene items for those families that may not have kids. At the same time, we also just love celebrating life. And so we introduce them to baby showers and just the celebration of just the different seasons that they're in. We had one mom that gave birth a week before our baby shower event and brought her 1-week-old baby to us. And with children, we focus on academic success and discipleship. So we host an after-school program 4 days a week. With middle and high schoolers, we'll offer tutoring. We have scholarships for kids going to college. Like I mentioned earlier, only about 6% of refugee students are going to university. And so the fact that we can walk alongside them and provide some aid. We have youth programs that meet throughout the week and sometimes the weekends. For adults, we're helping them move towards self-sufficiency. Depending on where they're coming from, they may speak some English and sometimes they may not. So we have English classes several times throughout the week. We've got a men's lunch and fellowship of just getting together and teaching them certain skills and having discussions with them about things that they need to know about leading their families, navigating life here in America. For women, we have a women's conversation club where sometimes we have people from very conservative cultures where they may not be able to leave their house, but this is a very safe place because it's just a bunch of women getting together for tea. But being able to pour into them, build relationships with them, to do home visits and really get to know the family in that regard. We'll help with job fairs as people are just trying to figure out, how do I get into the workplace? One thing that isn't often talked about is when a refugee comes, they have to pay for their airline ticket. They have to start paying for things very quickly. They have a government checklist. And so it's not this handout of sorts. It really is here's a little bit of help to get you on your feet, and then you're contributing to society very, very quickly. And then we like to have fun. We like to celebrate different things. And so around Christmas time, we do a big Christmas market where we give out gifts. This past year, we served over 500 families with Christmas gifts and got to share the gospel with them and share how this is the greatest gift that you can have as a relationship with Jesus. And then every summer, we do a Vickery mission trip, which is really just a sampler of all the programs that we do. So we have one coming up in June. If you're interested in joining us, we have a deadline that is coming up on March 15th. And so that is us. We would love if you would want to connect with us, if you would like to come out, get a tour of our facility. We just like to learn how to engage your international neighbors, the refugees that are living out here while you're in seminary, just to make the just to maximize your time out here. And so if you'd like to know more, we have a table out this week, and we'll just love to connect with you guys. And I don't know if I have time for questions, if any of you questions, or if you want and you want to talk afterwards, we can talk afterwards as well. So yeah. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come out today and go through this exercise. I really just pray, and we've just been praying that the Lord would just open eyes just to the needs around refugees or the marginalized groups so often that aren't talked about and aren't fully understood. And just am grateful that you guys came out today just to learn more about them and go through this simulation stuff.